2017 budget on course as President Buhari forwards medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper to National Assembly.
Federal government inaugurates Constitution and Electoral Reforms Committee.
Expected by way of consolidation to come up with a draft executive memo that will be submitted to the Federal Executive Council.
ECOWAS court orders federal government to pay 15 million naira damages for illegal detention of former National Security Advisor Mohammed Sabo Dasuki.
And Good Morning Nigeria. Today we examine the Nigerian legal system and justice administration in the current fight against corruption.
Now, that corruption is a major challenge to Nigeria's development and economic growth is a fact that has now been accepted by both Nigerians and non-Nigerians as a unquestionable truth.
Well, the outright misappropriation, conversion, diversion, and theft of public funds and resources obviously have left Nigeria with a damaged reputation and negative perception of being a country that is almost hopelessly mismanaged.
And to combat the hydra-headed monster called corruption in Nigeria, as in other countries of the world, governments set up the legal and institutional mechanism to investigate, prosecute and penalize cases of corruption, especially those bombarding on financial and economic crimes in accordance with the rule of law.
And as a sign of an earlier stage of the commitment to the war on graft, the Obasanjo administration established the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission that was under the EFCC Act of 2004. Now, earlier, the administration had also established the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, that's to say the ICPC, at the beginning of the century. That's the year.
With the police and lately the Department of State Security Services, DSS, investigates alleged cases of corruption, of which are sent to various courts for diligent prosecution.
All right, what else we have earlier indicated, the Nigerian Constitution of 1999 as amended in Section 6 empowers the judiciary to carry out its functions, and this will of course include the trial of persons who are suspected to have had their hands in the public till by way of corruption and other related offenses, which also brings in the role of the legal profession that encapsulates both the bar and the bench.
However, legal experts have noted that the judiciary can only perform its constitutional duty effectively with the assistance of an independent legal profession, where there is a legal representative who at all times acts not only in the best interests of their clients, but also that of the general public.
Well, in acting in the interest of the general public, you say that you're acting for the cause of justice. But many observers believe that this ideal has remained a dream, as it were, as some lawyers and their clients continue to allegedly manipulate the loopholes in the criminal justice administration system.
And of course, you know, in Nigeria, once a person is accused of grand corruption, he becomes more emboldened. They hire the costlier senior lawyers to exploit or manufacture legal technicalities.
Well, in the name of the rule of law, corrupt persons also continue to hold on to and vigorously defend their proceeds of crime. The outcome is obviously what we find in rather dismal numbers of successful prosecution of persons who have been accused of corruption, and the way those cases drag on almost interminably.
And the legal experts submit, however, that all the blame should not be heaped on the judiciary and the legal profession. They say there is a general rot in the administration of investigative and prosecution of corruption cases.
So, we return to questions that bother most Nigerians and indeed lovers of Nigeria. How far will the ongoing war against corruption? Why has it been difficult, seemingly, to get conviction of high-profile cases of persons who have been accused of corruption. Now, are the laws defective, or what are the challenges in successfully prosecuting corruption cases in Nigeria? We shall try to provide answers to these questions and more in today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Rhoda Obo. I join Kingsley to welcome you to today's edition of the program, coming to you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, Africa's largest television network. In the course of the program, we shall bring to you our companion segments, and they include the newspaper review. We've got business, sports, foreign and entertainment news. But then we'll kick off with the news, as Anne Jibono will be our guide. Anne, good morning.
Yeah, good morning and welcome to the news. The national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, John Odige Oyegun, has described his party's victory in the last governorship election in Edo State as a reaffirmation of confidence in the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari and the ability of his administration to address Nigeria's fundamental problems. Speaking to the media after an audience with the president, Oyegun said the choice of the party's candidate and the giant strides recorded by Governor Adams Oshomole in developing the state were also contributory factors. The national chairman also reacted to what he called the differences of opinion between himself and one of the leaders of the party, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, describing it as normal in politics.
It was more of a referendum. First, on the performance of the governor. Second, on the quality of our candidate. And most importantly, given the for us to measure the continued popularity and acceptability of our president.
3 new ambassadors and 1 high commissioner have assumed official responsibilities in Nigeria on behalf of their countries. This followed the formal acceptance of their letters of credence by President Muhammadu Buhari. In an audience with the envoys, the president made a case for stronger global alliance towards halting the scourge of terrorism. The Minister of Science and Technology, Ogbonnaya Onu, says research institutes under the supervision of the ministry have been mandated to pursue vigorously the commercialization of research findings for the benefit of Nigerians. The minister, who spoke to State House correspondents shortly after the meeting of the National Research and Innovation Council, headed by the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, says the meeting, which is the second since the inception of the present government, is to advance the cause of science and technology in the country.
They will not be of direct benefit to our people. And we want to make sure that we make very important contributions in the area of job creation, wealth creation, poverty reduction. And you can only do so if research findings are commercialized. And we've made some progress. I'm sure you know the progress we made with our high-density nutrient biscuits.
President Muhammadu Buhari has sent the 2017 to 2019 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper to the Senate for consideration and passage. Correspondent Waziri Zeyanu reports that the Red Chambers also deliberated on other national issues.
I hereby forward the 2017-2019 MTEF and FSP to the distinguished Senate. Expeditiously approved so as to move the 2017 federal budget process forward.
Similarly, the House of Representatives has received the medium-term expenditure framework for 2017-2019 fiscal year from President Muhammadu Buhari. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Nko reports that Speaker Yakubu Dogara announced the receipt of the President's communication on the floor of the House.
The MTEF and FSP, which provide the framework for the development of the 2017 budget, was designed against the backdrop of a generally adverse global economic environment, as well as fiscal challenges in the domestic economy.
In a move to deepen Nigeria's democracy and entrench an enduring electoral process, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, has inaugurated a Constitution and Electoral Reforms Committee in Abuja. Aliyu Tuko reports that the 25-member committee has former Senate President Ken Nnamani as chairman.
An electoral committee whose responsibility is not indeed expected to end with mere recommendations, but expected by way of consolidation to come up with a draft executive memo that will be submitted to the Federal Executive Council.
Most people rely on getting victory through the court instead of through the ballot box. We have to reduce that tendency and let the mandate of the people count. Let all votes count and let all votes be counted.
And the ECOWAS Community Court of Justice sitting in Abuja has ordered the Nigerian government to pay 15 million naira as damages for illegal detention. National Security Advisor to the President, retired Colonel Mohammed Sambo Duksuki, Saliu Abdullahi, reports that Justice Friday Chijoke led 2 other justices of the court to deliver judgment in the matter in Abuja. The Federal Ministry of Information and Culture has signed a memorandum of understanding to fund the development of young talents in the creative industry. The MOU was signed in Lagos at a ceremony that was well attended by a cross-section of stars drawn from the entertainment industry.
Specifically, the creation of an enabling business environment for the creative industries, with such incentives as easy access to finance, the structuring of the creative industries to enable it to generate independent revenues locally, and also to boost exports to increase Nigeria's foreign exchange.
That is, to channel the creativity and art of our people into value by teaching our creative ones entrepreneurial skills and creating an enabling environment for them to succeed and thrive.
The Nigerian Customs Service has reiterated its commitment to partner relevant government agencies in protecting the country's economy and defending its sovereignty. Olajide Bello reports that the Controller General of the Nigerian Customs Service, Colonel Hamid Ali, retired, stated this at a joint media briefing on illegal rice importation to Nigeria.
We cannot man every inch of the border, so we now embark on stop and search.
We are also custom agent to help the custom in preventing the smuggling.
I wish to reaffirm that the existing cooperation and collaboration with NCS will be strengthened.
Well, that's the news for now. Rhoda and Kingsley will be back after this break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Every goal, every success deserves your all. Only 100% will do. Chivita, 100%. Chivita 100% juice. Made from real natural fruits. With no preservative and no added sugar. The best always believes in 100%.
Chivita, 100% or nothing.
The NTA ETV National Children's Expo for Scientific, Technological and Artistic Inventions is in its 10th edition. We are set to make history again, live at the NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja, with the theme, improved technology, and impetus for mechanized agriculture, renewable energy, and economic development of the nation. Date Sunday, October 23rd to Thursday, October 27, 2016, 9 a.m. each day. As usual, this event is open only to junior categories of ages 6 to 12 years and senior categories of 13 to 18 years in both arts, science, or technology. Participants must be in the school system. Are you ready to be a part of the biggest gathering of Nigerian children with creative and innovative ideas? Note, all NTA stations nationwide are implored to complete their preliminary competitions ahead of the Abuja event in October.
All right, welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on Africa's largest television network, the NTA. Let's bring you up to date now with some business news as Nigeria begins a week-long billion-dollar roadshow, and the Nigerian Stock Exchange opens the week with a marginal loss after the public holiday. The all-share index declined by 0.2%. Leah Katung-Babatunde brings us up to speed on these developments in the financial world.
The Debt Management Office, DMO, has launched a one-week roadshow to Britain and the United States to promote a planned $1 billion Eurobond issue to investors. Finance Minister Kemi Adeosun, who is away to Washington to attend a World Bank meeting, is scheduled to take part in the roadshow. Nigeria is yet to appoint advisors and book runners for the bond offer after bids for the roles closed on September 19. The DMO has said it expects to raise $1 billion from the Eurobond market by mid-December as part of Nigeria's plan to borrow a total of 1.8 trillion naira from abroad and at home to fund an expected budget deficit of 2.2 trillion naira this year. Africa's top economy has slid into recession for the first time in more than 20 years, brought on by low oil prices that have slashed government revenues and weakened the currency. Last week, the president of the Africa Development Bank, AFDB, said its board will this month consider approving a first $1 billion loan to Nigeria to help cover this year's budget deficit. Next is a graphic summary of closing figures from the Nigerian Stock Exchange this Tuesday. A new report launched by the United Nations indicates evidence is increasing that climate change is taking the largest toll on poor and vulnerable people, and these impacts are largely caused by inequalities that increase the risk from climate hazards. Speaking to reporters in New York on the launch of Climate Change Resilience, an Opportunity for Reducing Inequalities report, the UN Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development, Lenny Montiel, said persistent inequalities in access to assets, opportunities, political voice and participation, and in some cases outright discriminations, leave large group of people and community disproportionately exposed and vulnerable to climate hazards.
Governments have a clear role to play with policies to address the root causes of inequalities, to reduce the vulnerability of people to climate hazards, building their longer-term resilience.
On transformative policies, the Chief of Development Strategy and Policy at UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, DESA, Diana Alacon, said that transformative policies could help build climate change resilience, close inequality gaps, provide access to financial services, to diversification of the livelihoods, to quality education and health and social security. According to the UN, in the past 20 years, 4.2 billion people have been affected by weather-related disasters, including a significant loss of lives. Developing countries are the most affected by climate change impacts. Low-income countries suffer the greatest losses, including economic cost estimated at 5% of gross domestic product GDP. With Business News, I'm Leah Katung-Babatunde.
Thank you very much there, Leah Katung-Babatunde, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Now it's time for us to take a look at the headlines in some of the papers this morning.
All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebe, is already in the studio. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's begin our review this morning with the Nation newspaper. The Nation newspaper has a fairly busy front page, and we kick off with the stories headlined above the nameplate. To the right side, it says CCT, that's Code of Conduct Tribunal, convicts Orubebe for false asset declaration. Details of that story on page 5. You also have that story, of course, on the front pages of the other papers that we have. Now, the other headlines there say as follows: gunmen kidnap ex-minister and husband in Abuja. Details on page 44. And ex-Benue Subeb chair arraigned for 97.5 million naira fraud. ECOWAS court declares Dasuki's detention illegal, and federal government to sell off 2 presidential aircraft. Details of that story on page 10. Now, the lead story for the Nation newspaper is to be found, of course, on the mid-section of the front page. It says Buhari rejects 1.7 trillion naira ransom for Chibok girls. Buhari rejects 1.7 trillion naira ransom for Chibok girls. With 2 riders, biographer relieves talks with Boko Haram, and president didn't foil 1985 coup despite hint. Obviously, these are headlines coming from the book that was launched a couple of days ago on the president. Now, above the headline, the lead story, you have 2 other headlines referring to stories inside the paper. British scientists win Nobel Prize, and government proposes 6.866 trillion naira for 2017 budget. Details of that you can find on page 10. And then the other, of course, other headlines that we'll take a look at from other papers. Rhoda.
All right, let's go now to the Punch. And on the Punch, let's begin just above the masthead. It says federal government puts up 7 billion naira presidential jet for sale. That story you can find on page 21. And on page 11, 14 billion naira was missing in Katsina Road Agency account, says MD. And gunmen ignore police presence, abduct former minister and hubby in Kaduna. That's on page 10. And below the masthead, alleged 25 billion naira fraud. And with, of course, the big story, court orders arrest of Gombe ex-governor Goje. That's on page 7. Beside the picture story on the right, you'd see ECOWAS court directs release of Dasuki, fines federal government 15 million naira. That's on page 12. And on page 10, you can read up Senate probes 1.3 billion naira contract, IDP's food diversion. Asset declaration, OCT convicts Orubebe, ex-minister loses Abuja property. That's on page 9 of the Punch. All right, Bayo, let's start from there.
Yeah, there's a whole lot now that you've taken on, but let's look at the economy first. Already, the president has sent a 2017-2019 medium-term expenditure frame and the fiscal strategy proposal to the National Assembly, which means that there also is a proposal for 6,866,335,552,740 has been proposed for the budget 2017. The letter was sent to both chambers. You may recall that there was a constitutional amendment requiring the executive to present the budget to the National Assembly by October. This was to enable the National Assembly complete the process before December, so that by January the budget will be ready. We hope they will be able to meet this target this time. In the proposal, the capital expenditure is put about 1.765 trillion, recurrent 2.563 trillion, and debt servicing will take 1.63 billion. There is social intervention program, which is to take about 350 billion naira. The 2017 budget also is higher than that of 2016 by 805 billion naira. Revenue projection is about 4.169 billion. And also, there's good news. The International Monetary Fund has projected that Nigeria's economy will grow by 0.6% in 2017, giving an indication that Nigeria is likely to get out of recession by 2017. Nigeria economy contrasted about 1.7% and 1.8%, and the earlier forecast of the IMF was 1.8, but they have now corrected that it contrasted by 1.7, which shows that there is an upsurge in the economy gradually. For the benchmark for the budget that is being sent to the National Assembly, oil production is put about 2.2 million barrels per day. Oil benchmark is $42.5 per barrel, and exchange rate is put at 290. I recall that Kingsley, there was this alarm that the parallel market, the dollar was going for about almost 500 two days ago.
Yeah, but the figure has climbed down. Yesterday we took the topic and we had the president of the Association of Broad Exchange Operators who said the band was now something between 420 and 450 or so, that we should expect a further climb down in the rate against the dollar. That's
like
right.
Water, it will find its own level. There's also the sale of the presidential aircraft that you read, Rhoda.
Yeah.
Well, this special advisor to the president on media, Garabashiu, was the one who gave this indication. It is the sale of 2 planes in the presidential fleet. Currently, the presidential fleet has 10 aircrafts. 2 of them are due for sale. In fact, those 2 to be sold were bought in 2010. One was bought for $51.1 million, the other for $53.3 million. The already advertisement have been put up there for sale.
I actually saw the advertisement online, I think, a few days ago.
All right, so you are interested in purchasing one. All right, so let's take a look very briefly at the Nigerian pilot. Indeed, the lead story of the Nigerian pilot has to do with the medium-term economic framework, which Bayo has already discussed extensively. It's not the appropriation yet. It's proposing 6.9 trillion and talking about the deficit, that 2.7 trillion naira for the deficit, and the total debt stock will hit some 16.3 trillion naira. Then you also have the optimistic forecast with regard to Nigeria's recession being over by 2017, according to the IMF. Details of that story can be found on page 6. The story also has the order by the ECOWAS court requiring the immediate release of the former NSA Dasuki from detention. Now, let's go over very quickly to the blueprint. Blueprint has this headline with a kicker: Oyegun dares Tinubu, you can't remove me. And we have the rider there, stop playing God, APC youth tell Ashiwaju. That's the headline, lead story for the blueprint. And then below that, second lead story says, Senate probes IDP's 5 billion naira fraud. Details of that story on page 6. And Saraki files suit to stop CC trial again. But unfortunately, well, that's according to the blueprint. Now, if you go to the foot of the front page of the Nation newspaper, the headline is different. It says Saraki disowns suit against CCT. CCT stands for the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Details of that story on page 5 of the Nation. But on page 22 of the blueprint is that Saraki has filed a suit to stop the CC trial one more time. Now you also have the headlines relating to figures pertaining to proposals for the medium-term expenditure framework, and then Sikla seeks 1 million naira for hip surgery. Details on page 15. And Orubebe to forfeit assets to federal government, CCT rules. Bayo, that's an interesting subject matter because the former minister says is going on appeal and that he, of course, doesn't own the property. He had transferred his interest, so what property is being confiscated?
Well, there are 2 cases about the court. That of the former minister of the Niger Delta, Goste Orubebe. The Justice Danladi Omar ruled that the elder Orubebe had his ownership of the plot in Asoko should be forfeited to the federal government. But in his defense, he said that he has sold the plot before he declared his asset. But evidence still showed that 6 years after he claimed to have sold the plot, his name is still on the document as the owner. He is to forfeit that property to the... Like you said, his client has indicated that the lawyer says he is going to appeal the court. On the ECOWAS court, a panel of 3 justices led by Justice Friday Nwoke has said that the arrest without a search warrant of the SYL National Security Advisor called Sambo Dasuki negates Section 28 of the Nigerian Police Act. He has also said that his arrest in November 4th, after he had been granted bail, is a mockery of democracy and the rule of law. There is also the story you read about the APC chairman. Actually, he had visited the president, and when he was coming, he was asked by members of the press corps at the presidency, and he said that the constitution of the APC stipulates how a chairman should be removed and not on the pages of the newspaper. But many newspapers have have cast sensational headlines of that story and apparently trying to fuel the disagreement between them. There were also some youth who were demonstrating. The youth had actually said that the APC leader Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is behaving like an emperor. One paper is reported to have said he's playing God. So this is the sensation that is being brought to fuel between the two party leaders.
All right, very quickly, let's go through some of the papers. Of course, you have actually reviewed some of the stories, but then let's quickly go through them. The Daily Times, just beside the masthead, it says Buhari sends MTF to the Senate. Asset declaration, CCT finds Orubebe guilty. And the big story on Daily Times this morning, ECOWAS court to federal government let Dasuki go. With riders awards 15 million naira fine in favor of ex-NSA, says continued detention of Dasuki violates both national and international law, dismisses allegation of unlawful possession of firearms, economic crimes leveled against Dasuki. And earlier on, we also read that on The Nation. It says 2 presidential jets for sale. That's on page 5. Reps call for free antenatal service. That's on page 5 of the Daily Times. And the Authority newspaper is next. I'd like to take just above the masthead, erosion sacks 500 residents, destroy 100 houses in Anambra. And there's another interesting one, page 45, just beside that story. Federal government can't maintain Abuja Lagos Stadia. That statement they're credited to Solomon Dalong, and that's a sports minister. And of course, the big headline on the Authority this morning is that of the budget, 2017 budget. Federal government targets 6.866 trillion naira, proposes $42.5. That's oil benchmark exchange rate at 290 per dollar, targets 2.2 million barrels daily oil production. Of course, and below the picture story, finally, Senate's ask federal government to fix Onitsha Enugu Expressway. And that's it, mine.
Yes, okay. Well, the other story there now is about Chibok girls. The book that was launched on Monday has now revealed that there was actually a demand of 5 billion euro, which is equivalent of 1.7 trillion at the current exchange rate of about 374 naira to $1. And that's what the papers are saying. The newspapers are relying on a review of the book, and it revealed that the DSS was in a dilemma, and their dilemma was that the military assault on the girls that were being held and the danger of those girls being killed in the process of the assault. However, he said that there were secret negotiations that were held for exchanging of Boko Haram prisoners and the girls, but the thing broke down at the last minute, and the directive was that downgrade the Boko Haram and tighten the noose around them in Sambisa forest, and that is the strategy they were carrying out as a military.
All right, thank you, Bayo. Thank you very much for your time and, of course, for the review this morning. That's the much we can take on our newspaper review segment. All right, we'll take a short break now, and when we return, our item for discussion this morning, the legal profession in the fight against corruption. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again, that is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too! Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, welcome back. It's time for us now to focus on our item for discussion this morning, which is the legal profession in the fight against corruption. Nigerians and indeed Nigeria are today bearing the burden of huge corruption and the damage it has caused to the nation's development agenda. Although fighting corruption is said to be everyone's business, those who walk in the temple of justice appear to have a major role to play in ensuring that the menace is eradicated. Here is our correspondent, Makut Simon Macham, with this background report on the role of the legal profession in the fight against corruption.
The word corruption is common in Nigeria and almost everyone appears to know what it means. This is rightly so because many associate it with the looting of public funds by those entrusted with managing it in such a manner that the nation is paying a huge price with underdevelopment and poverty affecting majority of Nigerians. That notwithstanding, corruption is not limited to financial embezzlement as it generally refers to any form of dishonest or unethical conduct by a person entrusted with a position of authority in such a way as to acquire personal benefit. Many believe that Nigeria since independence has been unable to live its full potential due to corruption, especially as its natural resources have been cornered by a few who ironically were entrusted with the management of these resources to the benefit of all, particularly the weak and vulnerable. Added to this is a situation where even the human resource endowments of the nation have not been able to be harnessed and utilized properly due to the usual monster, corruption. Thankfully, the Constitution gives the judiciary the duty to try any person or group of persons suspected to have been involved in corruption and sentence them to prescribed punishments. This brings in the role of the legal profession, which encapsulates both the bench and the bar that are key actors in the judicial arena. Although state agents like the Police, Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, among others, are saddled with the duty to investigate, arrest and prosecute people suspected of corruption, the duty of finding them guilty or not lies with the courts. Here, lawyers defend or prosecute the cases so as to establish the truth and allow the judge to decide. Recent developments in the legal profession have brought about discussions as to how the fight against corruption can succeed. Many believe that the bar must be above board and act in accordance with the law in dealing with corruption cases. This also involves expeditious treatment and application of prescribed punishment for corrupt persons. On the part of the bar, their engagements must also be seen to be above board, as both the accuser and the accused in any corruption case demand nothing but justice. The situation where some lawyers are accused of attempting to exploit loopholes in the law or using unethical means to shield alleged corrupt individuals from punishment is worrisome and only serves as an incentive that oils the wheels of corruption. Prosecuting agencies must also painstakingly gather their facts and evidences against alleged corrupt persons and present them to the courts, all in the interest of justice. Above all, those in the legal profession cannot afford to be smeared with corruption in any way, as that will make a mockery of the fight against corruption and indeed turn the hunter to the hunted.
All right, Simon, thank you very much there for that background report. Now we have guests with us here in the Abuja studios to discuss this subject matter. First, we're being joined now by a former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Niger State and also a former Deputy Chief Justice of Zanzibar, Justice Garba Tumaka. Justice Tumaka, a pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you very much. We're pleased to be here.
Okay. And then we also have with us learned senior advocate and also the pioneer chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association Anti-Corruption Committee. He's Yusuf Ali, senior advocate. Our pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Thanks.
All right.
And also in this discussion, we're also being joined by Professor Epiphany Azinge. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria and also a former Director General of the Nigeria Institute of the Advanced Legal Studies. Professor Azinge, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, gentlemen, let's kick off from where our background report stopped, and also to take a historical view of things. 50 years ago, when Nigeria suffered its first military coup, one of the reasons given by the plotters had to do with the so-called 10%. The 10% referred to the kickbacks that the politicians were supposed to be receiving at the time. In 1975, when there was another military coup, it was also corruption. And of course, since the beginning of the Fourth Republic in 1999, with the establishment of ICPC and EFCC and the various cases and trials that we have seen, it's been corruption, corruption, and corruption. And the question has been raised whether the law is doing enough in the fight against this national scourge. Let's begin with Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting that everything revolves around law, revolves around the legal profession, revolves around the criminal justice administration. Yes, the law, the problem with Nigeria and Nigerians is not with our laws. The problem of a law is as good as when it is enforced. And lawyers are not the people who enforce the law, so to say, especially criminal law. You have all the agencies of government controlled by the executive, whose duties are to ensure that there's prevention of crime, there's apprehension of criminals, there's investigation of criminals, and there's prosecution of criminals. It's like a chain, and the legal profession is at the end of the chain of the fight against corruption. There are other agencies that are controlled especially and principally by the executive. So for me, the legal profession has been up and doing, as far as I know, in the fight against corruption and other negative tendencies in our land. The issue is how effective are the enforcement of our laws. And I give you a small example, how ineffective the enforcement of laws are in this country. The traffic laws. They are the simplest, but they are the most abused. When some of us were much younger, it was quite interesting when you boarded the public transport and you were moving from one city to the other, and there were VIOs or policemen checking on the roads. If a driver was carrying excess luggage or passengers, they will stop before they got to the checkpoint to offload those excess luggage or passengers, and because they didn't want to breach the law. The impunity with which traffic laws are even broken and non-observed tells you a lot about the fact that the problem with the laws is not the laws per se, but the enforcement of those laws.
All right, Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali, we'll come back to you. Let's get the comments of the other guests, beginning, of course, with Justice Tumaka. When I asked the question whether the law is doing enough in the fight against corruption, I use law in a generic sense, not necessarily the black letter of the provisions you find in the statute. It encompasses, of course, the statute, it encompasses judicial precedents and the personnel who are supposed to operate in the temple of justice. So I would like Justice Tumaka to respond to this. Is the law doing enough in Nigeria to tackle corruption?
Thank you. I align completely with my learned silk There is obviously no doubt that the Nigerian society, the legal profession, is only a microcosm of the general Nigerian society. And we do not live outside the society. As much as the law is concerned, to the best of my ability from what I've seen so far and what I know so far, the laws are there. Compliance is where the problem is. We've had a few cases, we can't run away from the fact that we've had a few exceptional cases of a misdemeanor here and there as far as officers of the law are concerned. But in general terms, the laws are there. It's the compliance that is the problem.
All right, thank you very much, Justice Tumaka. But then let's get the view of SC and Azinge. Is the law actually, because this would, of course, help us to lay a good foundation for this discussion this morning. We'd also like to get your perspective. Is it an issue of enforcement? Is it the fact that, just as Yusuf Ali said, SAN said that, of course, there are other agencies that are set up, that the law is just like at the bottom end of the whole issue? Is the law actually doing enough?
Yes, the law is doing enough. I think I'll leave it at that. Because for me, there are fundamental misconceptions that we must address for us to see something going. You cannot keep repeating the same thing over and over again and getting the same result, and you don't accept that there is something fundamentally wrong. For me, lawyers are doing their bit. Even the enforcement agencies are also doing their bit. But that fundamental misconception is still there. You don't expect to rush into a court and secure conviction overnight. It's not possible. The constitutional provision is very clear as to the right to fair hearing, even of an accused person. For me, what we need to be addressing, are there areas of the law that we need to tinker with in order to achieve what we are supposed to achieve? We have set up special courts, so to speak. We've designated judges to look into corruption matters. But still, it would appear that we are not making progress. We have established the administration of criminal justice system law, which obviously is to promote speedy dispensation of justice. And yet, 1 year after, it would appear we are not making progress. So for me, something is fundamentally wrong. And what is it that is fundamentally wrong? Our criminal justice system, per se, in the sense that we are saying that this is a crime and must be proved beyond reasonable doubt. And that is very, very...
But then, you know, this was what the president was actually talking about just a few months ago, because you said justice cannot just be secured overnight. Everybody needs to have fair hearing. But the president is also saying that this delay tactics is also a problem.
Well, the delay tactics is obviously circumscribed by what I'm trying to talk about. You cannot. Where are the witnesses? Where are the facts? You must prove beyond reasonable doubt. You need all these ingredients to prove beyond reasonable doubt. And except you have all those ingredients, you cannot secure conviction. And then somebody will say that there is delay. The delay is part and parcel of the criminal justice system, because the wheel of justice grinds very slowly but surely. And if you try to hasten anything unnecessarily, then you will get the wrong result. All I'm trying to say, in effect, is that we have come to a stage where we should be asking ourselves this question. Must corruption matters still be based on proof beyond reasonable doubt? My colleagues will agree that years back, and I can say this authoritatively because the Nigerian jurisprudence, as far as electoral law is concerned, is the best in the whole world. I don't think there is any other country that has pursued electoral matters more than Nigeria. So our jurisprudence is the best in that regard. But we normally say that electoral matters are sui generis. In other words, they are of a special breed of their own. And we address it as such. Have we come to a stage where we can tell ourselves now that corruption matters can be made sui generis? You make the law you want in your own country in order to achieve the result. And if we are prepared to say so, and we are prepared to address it accordingly, then we can be telling ourselves that we may not push to prove beyond reasonable doubt. That maybe we've gotten to a point where we should be telling ourselves that this can be based on balance of probabilities so that we can achieve what we want to achieve early enough and speedily as the case may be. We must address those fundamental issues. For me, that is the problem. It is not the law, not necessarily those enforcing it or any other thing. It is just that we have this fundamental problem which we must address if we are to make progress as far as corruption cases are concerned.
All right, Professor Epifani Azinge, thank you very much there for the jurisprudential questions that you have posed. And I would like the other guests to also respond to this before we get into the nitty-gritty. Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali, you listen to the proposition by Professor Azinge. He says, look, we need to revisit, as it were, our criminal jurisprudence with regard to the prosecution of corruption cases. Now, of course, you need to explain to our viewers the difference between proving beyond reasonable doubt and also having your case proved, or proven, rather on the balance of probabilities.
What Professor Azinge is saying is not totally new to our jurisprudence. There are some offenses we call offenses of strict liability. Yes. These are offenses for which the onus of proving innocence is cast on the accused person. And for me, we have enough of such in our law books. For example, I will advocate, for example, if somebody is accused of living above his normal means, a man who all his life was a civil servant, for example, and probably retires on the highest level, level 17, will know what his income was over the years. And then you now discover that he owns billion-dollar type of properties. Actually, this is one of the dormant areas of the the anti-corruption laws that has not been activated, as far as I'm concerned. Because there are provisions in the ICPC Act that if a man is living above his normal income, he should be invited and asked, how come your net asset is over your net pay or income? So those are kind of offenses that should be of strict liability. You see, there are other offenses. If you accuse A of having stolen, it will be a bit awkward to ask A who is accused to show that he didn't steal. So, except for offenses of strict liability, you see, in our haste to promote the administration of justice, we should also not at the same time create other problems. Our country, given the level of our security personnel, where transparency is a bit hazy, it will be too dangerous to throw Nigerians into what I call an open sesame of problems. You see, because when you are talking about corruption, we tend to think of only of the what we call the grand corruption. Corruption is everywhere. You can see it, you can perceive it on a daily basis. So for me, and I've said this before, the top to bottom approach about fight against corruption is not working and it's not likely to work. The average person, the average Nigerian must buy into this thing for us to be able to move forward. And the example I give is simple. In this studio, we're about 10. If 2 people are, the only 2 people here are upright, and 8 others are not upright, the 8 people will undo the work of the 2 people. It's as simple as that. So for 10 of us in this studio to fight corruption effectively, at least 5 of us must buy into it that, look, corruption is bad. So we should be able to, or at least out of the other 5, we'll be able to at least take 2 or influence 2 out of them to make us 7. But when you have 100 people, only 2 people are upright, then we are just going around until the average Nigerian sees something bad, sees something unwholesome, sees corruption as a disease, then we won't get near solution. Talk about law, who breaches the law? Who do all sorts of things for others, to take electoral violence, for example. Until the political parties make up their minds they don't want violence, you can't hand it. You can deploy all the policemen, all the soldiers in Nigeria. Well,
are you, senior advocate, are you expressing a sense of helplessness?
No, I'm not helpless.
Hang on a second. Is it helplessness, or you believe that law cannot now be an instrument of social reform? Rather, it should be one of moral suasion?
Thank you very much. I believe law should be the instrument for social reform. I'm just saying that, yes, well, it's easy to talk about all these things in esoteric manners, but in practical terms, all of us, most of us, must buy for law to be effective, for example, to observe the law. Who breaches the law? Are the ordinary people. All of us. So, but if we want the laws to be observed, you and I must make up our minds. Oh, yes, from today, I won't drive on the wrong side of the road, for example. From today, I won't do something that is unwholesome on the road. The laws about road and traffic will be maintained. It's the same thing with corruption. So I'm just expressing the view that you can put all the laws in place. You can put everything in place. The willpower of the majority to observe and act in accordance with the law, especially on the issue of corruption, is very, very, very vital. Very vital.
All right, thank you very much. We'll come back to you in the course of this, but let's get the views now of Justice Tumaka. Justice Tumaka, you listen to both Professor Azinge and Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali with regard to what needs to be done. Professor Azinge says, look, we need to revise our criminal jurisprudence instead of a balance of instead of proof beyond reasonable doubt, it should be on the balance of probabilities, which is normally the case, in civil matters. Now, will you subscribe to that, or you believe that we should go ahead with what Yusuf Ali has said? That look, we have strict liability laws already, so
exactly. That is what my view is, that the laws that are in existence today are sufficient. The strict liability laws are there. Now, in this instance, I want to give an example. The proof is essentially hinged on evidence, testimony. And testimony would come from all sources. Now, would you want a situation whereby the guilt of a person is hinged on unqualified testimony? By this I mean, do we at this point say that we are shifting from accepted norms, from accepted standards? Because the standard for any criminal activity is that the proof must be beyond reasonable doubt. I subscribe completely, and I believe that in our society, where there is conviction in the press, where there is conviction even before matters are taken to court, it will be a very dangerous precedent to shift this standard. Yes.
All right, Justice Tumaka, one of the issues that have continued to bother a lot of people is that the myriad of corruption cases that we have, the blame too has not just gone to the lawyers, but also some people are also saying that the judges we have, are they well equipped to handle the level and the number of corruption cases we have in Nigeria?
Well, that is a question that goes to the root of a lot of things. The complaints that have been bedeviling, we're talking about lack of facilities, lack of insufficiency of materials, the overburdening of the judges that we have. That is not to say that we have not had serious, very, very, very serious attempts, very, very serious efforts by the few people, by the people in the judiciary to do their utmost. Definitely, one of the issues that I would like to even canvass is the total and financial independence of the judiciary. As it is right now, we still have that, as far as I'm concerned, only in the books, where a situation whereby allocations to the judiciary is dependent on the whims and caprices of the executive, where the body language of the executive determines what happens in the judiciary. I don't know, I don't want to castigate anybody or anything, but I feel that to a large extent, the judiciary is handicapped, but it has performed very creditably. I mean, amongst the three arms of government, executive and legislature, the judiciary in this democratic dispensation has acquitted itself very, very creditably. To some extent, we have in place organs and bodies that keep in check, supposed to keep in check the practitioners. And to some extent, even though we've had fireworks from high-ranking members of the executive, ranging from the president to the EFCC chairman, all that, indicting members of the bench, I still feel that comparatively, the judiciary has done extremely well.
All right, Justice Tumaka, thank you very much. Let's return to Professor Azinge. Professor Azinge, just before we go back to another leg of this conversation, are you satisfied with the rejoinders you got from the other two guests with respect to your proposition for a review of criminal jurisprudence, particularly in the prosecution of corruption cases? I mean, they are saying strict liability regime suffices. Are you okay with that?
With respect, not exactly, in the sense that with strict liabilities, issue of shifting burden, but the standard of proof is still the same thing, and that does not equally address that matter. As a student in London in the 80s, it got to a point where the English criminal justice system started tinkering with its criminal jurisprudence to the extent of trying to form a hybrid between the inquisitorial system and the adversary system. That is where we are at this point in time. It's just that the legal profession is very conservative, or law generally is very conservative, and people don't want to shift grounds. I believe we have come to a stage where we should be thinking of a harmony between the inquisitorial system and the adversarial system. It is not cast in stone. The problem in Nigeria is that many people believe that certain things are cast in stone. People make things the way they work and make it dynamic. At that point in time, England thought that we have gotten to a point where this criminal justice system was no longer working for us. Let us look to the continent and see what we can take from the inquisitorial system. Let us see what is happening in France, amongst other places, in Germany, and then bring them and fuse them into what they have. That they did at that point in time. Nigeria, we have gotten to that stage now where we must look at the inquisitorial system and shift a little bit away from the adversarial system, which we operate at this point in time, and see how it can work for us. When we do that, we must start questioning the Constitution even, this presumption of innocence. Because in the continental system, they say you are presumed guilty until the contrary is proved. Here, constitutionally, we say you are presumed innocent. So you see, we have a fundamental problem. And I keep bringing us back to that. What can we do to lessen the burden for everybody? Lawyers, judges, even the enforcement agencies.
But then could that be the reason why we have people here proven innocent or not guilty, and then they go outside of the country and then they are found guilty?
I will not comment on that because perhaps maybe, but the position is that when something has not worked for years. But again, ask yourself, coming to the point my Lord alluded to, I was in the office of the Attorney General in 95-97 when the failed bank trial was on board. How come that succeeded? Advance fee fraud succeeded. Failed bank succeeded. What is it that is making it not possible for ICPC, EFCC, and the others, and the judiciary to work at this point in time? How many years after? Was it because it was a tribunal that was in place as opposed to a full court of law. Because at that point in time, failed banks were manned by tribunal, but they were headed by judges. And those judges worked efficiently, and they obtained results. And if you go down to the history and the statistics of the failed bank, you'll find that so many things worked and worked. Now we ask ourselves, if the judges are not working because of some of those things that circumscribe our law, must we turn to a tribunal to see whether we can secure conviction, as the case may be, and maybe make things speedy and much more expeditious, as the case may be? These are some of the issues. All I'm saying is that we can't come back here every now and then and we are repeating ourselves. It shows that something must give. And unless we accept that something must give, we will just be running around the circle, as the case may be.
Professor Ozinga, thanks a lot. We'll come back to you. Let's get the views of Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali. Senior Advocate, when you have in the public, in my popular imagination, corruption cases would appear to drag on almost interminably. And in other jurisdictions, you find corruption cases, are treated with a great deal of speed, and justice is meted out. I mean, the commonest example, you had what happened, of course, to Bernard Madoff, who ripped off American investors to the tune of well over $60 billion. He's been in a federal jail for many years. Now, in the case of corruption cases in Nigeria, you hardly find people who are pleading guilty. Instead, the matters drag on, technicalities from the lower court to court of appeal to Supreme Court, usually on interlocutory matters, and the Supreme Court has over 5,000 cases to deal with. What's going on?
Thank you very much. Let me quickly allude to something that Professor Zenge said. Failed bank tribunals work because, one, there were proper investigations of those cases. I was a prosecutor during the failed bank era. And I remember clearly, a file was referred to us. And usually, the people, the lawyers in the failed bank, in the various NDIC then, which was driving the failed bank thing, would draft their own charges. And they sent this to us, they drafted the charge of 30-something grounds. And when they briefed us, I looked at it. And I told them, there's no way we will succeed with this number of counts. For a simple offense, some people were tampering with the bank papers, and they were doing some computer fraud to take away money. After throwing back and forth, and I insisted, if you are not going to agree to my own professional judgment, if you have briefed us, then I won't take this matter. Eventually, those 35 counts were reduced to 4 counts. And we got conviction on all the 4 counts. You lay the foundation for criminal trial from proper investigation and drafting of proper charges. You see, these things don't just come. That's number one, why failed bank tribunal worked. They were judges, but all the facilities they needed were provided. Rented apartments were taken. The recording system was automated. Judges were not taking longhand notes like there happens in the high courts. All the high courts in Nigeria virtually. So when you are saying these things are not working, and it was also, there was presumption of innocence at that time, and we got convictions, lots of convictions, because the enabling environment to be able to perform were there for the judges, for the prosecutors who are engaged by the NDIC, and others. And then proper investigations were carried out. Now, coming to dragging of criminal cases here, especially corruption cases, you see, one, you must know that grand corruption is a white-collar crime committed by the brightest and the most influential members of the society. So, first and foremost, to confront it, you need the agencies that are well-equipped materially and humanly. That is, human and material must coincide in a way that they will be able, for example, if you're talking of somebody doing money laundering, that is not a species of a common crime. It's perpetrated by people who are well connected. So you need people who are properly trained and who have all the necessary things to be able to do a proper investigation, first and foremost. Number two, if you don't get the investigations right, there is no amount of things you do that will make the things to work fast. In other climes, Yes, somebody who was not found liable here, who pleaded guilty there, is because of the overwhelming nature of the evidence that were presented after thorough investigations. Nigeria is one of the few places in the world where people are first of all arraigned on the pages of newspaper before investigations are done. It's the other way around. You must first of all investigate. In fact, before somebody is said to be under investigation, the investigation must have gotten to a degree, almost 99% degree of certainty of prosecution. But here, we first of all take people to court and then start to look for the evidence with which to try them. So that's not a problem for even people out. It's a problem of the fact that we get it wrong. Once the investigation is not correct, once you don't do it properly, you can't build an edifice on it, it will collapse. And that is the experience there, with respect. Trials on the what we call mob trials, it goes on here. People are first of all sensitized against the people who are to be tried. Whereas, if you do your work properly, you confront a man, you found 5 billion in his account, and you are able to trace everything properly. I say, look, who owns this? Whose wife is this? Whose children are these? The owners of this account? They are mine. Okay, fine. What do you want us to do? But when you first of all go, we have found 500 billion, and then it turns out at the end of the day it's only 1 billion or whatever. You see, you reduce even the intensity of the gravity of the thing. So for me, all these corruption cases are dragging because, one, we should, the security agencies that deal with the issue of corruption, for example, for me, it's not out of place for EFCC to face squarely the issue of money laundering and those other offenses. ICPC, whose name, the name itself even suggests is the anti-corruption body, should face more squarely and be equipped to deal with the issue of corruption, graft, bribery, and things like that. And then let the police continue to deal with other petty crimes. And if we have that kind of synergy and collaboration between the agencies and well-defined portfolio for each one, we are likely to make more progress.
All right, learned senior advocate Yusuf Ali, thank you very much there for your perspective. Of course, we'll have the other guests respond to this aspect, but that will be after this short break.
Are you okay, sir?
Come and join me, have some drinks. I am Professor John Bull's younger brother.
They were drinking and drinking. Later, they started laughing and laughing and laughing.
And you kept on serving and serving and serving.
Is that not my job?
Oh, dear.
This week on your award-winning comedy series, Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Funky Malam, Oguz Baba, Yomi Fash Lanso, MC for God, Stephen Odingbe, Junior Pope.
I am perfectly okay. Boniface, you don't look tired. You look dead.
Professor John Bull, fasten your seatbelts this Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network, International, and StarTimes. It's absolutely bombastic.
Over and out. The largest data network, Glow, Grandmasters of Data.
Our latest edition of TV Guide is out. This edition of your favorite magazine will simply blow your mind. The package is loaded and our offering is quite illuminating. NTA has a new Director General, Yakubu Ibn Muhammad, a tested and trusted professional, an old wine that keeps getting better with age. This is the new driver of the digital switch over train. Get to know him more in TV Guide. And now, on our cover is one of Nigeria's most finest comic actors, Afiz Oyetoro, aka Saka. Peep into his world and you will see how he is putting from glory to glory. The change agenda of President Muhammadu Buhari, we did an assessment so far. All our refreshing columns and incisive features are a collector's item and research materials. TV Guide, available on your newsstands and in all NTA stations nationwide. Also in our embassies in United Kingdom, USA, China, Ghana and Egypt. TV Guide. Grab a copy and give one to a friend. TV Guide. Still your indispensable companion.
record of converting slums into new cities. Many years of experience has taught us to fish out allies within the communities we want to transform.
Don't listen to your husband. Listen to me. Give me a boy. And the two of you may never even have to work again.
Yeah, sharp guy, how are you? What's your name?
Akpos. America.
Oh, Akpos America.
Yeah, wow, love it too.
Wonderful wonder! Wonderful wonder!
You're welcome back, but if you just joined us, it's still Good Morning Nigeria, and we are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As you can see, we're discussing the legal profession and the fight against corruption. We still have our three guests here with us in the studios. Professor Epifani Azinge, SAN. We also have Justice Garba Tubaka, former Deputy Chief Justice of Zanzibar and Commissioner for Justice in Niger State, and Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali. Before we went on the short break, Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali was talking about the frustrations that often will arise where you do not have diligent prosecution of matters, also arising from the fact that you had a shoddy investigation. My question now goes to Justice Tumaka. How frustrating is it for a judge, even though you are like a still water waiting for the pebble to drop in and then get a ripple effect, that you find a case brought before you hopelessly by the prosecuting counsel?
Well, like you said, you find yourself frustrated. But you see, the difficulties that confront even the prosecution is such that I, as an individual, I can always understand. Now, to start with, if you look at facilities available to the officers, facilities available, if you take it from the law officers in the ministries of in the Ministry of Justice and the rest of them, go to their offices, you will not find simple computers, laptops. You don't find materials readily available. You have situations where people come, some counsel come to court and they are trying to make presentations, and you see them borrowing materials from each other. All these are part of the problems that we're talking about. And I always will want to predicate this issue mainly on the fact that the judiciary itself is not financially independent. To that extent, because if I could determine, I would ensure that before any case is brought before me, adequate investigations are carried out. That is, like you said, the synergy between the investigating forces, agencies. So at the end of the day, you have presented to the court clear, very clear testimonies. Like I said, I mean, there is an allusion to determination of matters by the judicial officer is based principally on what is presented before the court. You don't go fishing for evidence on behalf of your litigants. And like I said, I empathize with the legal officers, I mean, who are made to go through these difficulties. So to me, I would not want to castigate the officers, and at the same time, I would say that I'll come back to my point that it is the executive that is at fault. It is the executive that is at fault. I'd say so. we're three arms. The legislature is there. It is their responsibility to ensure that, okay, they look at the laws as they are, tinker them in such a way that they are people-friendly, right? That they are people-friendly, and then bring them to the courts for adjudication in terms of conflict. But here we are, where the searchlight is on the lawyer, the legal practitioner, the courts. They are the cause of. They propagate corruption in Nigeria. I don't subscribe to that at all.
I could remember also too when this came to the fore that the NBA chairman also said something like this, that there is also the lack of political will by the executives to also help in this prosecution. But then, Professor Azinge, I'd also like you to speak to the issues that they have also raised. That, of course, the issue of proper investigation, officers not properly being equipped with what they need to carry out these things. Do you agree with that, or do you think that there are other issues we should also be looking at?
No, to a large extent, I do agree. One, with the issue of investigation, amongst others, that perhaps we still need to do more. But to the extent that once investigation is not properly carried out, what is your fallback option? The Administration of Criminal Justice Act seemed to have given us a fallback option, and that seemed to have obviously endorsed the issue of plea bargain as far as our criminal jurisprudence is concerned, because it's not clearly spelled out in that particular enactment. Now, if you feel that you don't have enough witnesses and so on and so forth to go to court and establish your case beyond reasonable doubt, plea bargain. The position is very clear in the law now. Get the much you can, and that for me is as good as conviction. And you earn it at that point in time. You don't need to go to court. One thing that seems to be missing out, as far as we're concerned in this country, and that doesn't obtain in any other clime, is the issue of identifying the cost of prosecution. The cost of prosecution is something you should not toy with in any jurisdiction, because a lot of money. South Africa will tell you that to prosecute Pistorius cost them X amount of millions of dollars, as the case may be. So ask yourself, how much does it cost us to prosecute and fail, as the case may be? If we quantify that, then we'll come to this conclusion that we need not prosecute all matters, so that we don't waste that amount of money for nothing. So if we know that we have challenges of prosecution to an extent, then we take the next option. Go and plea bargain and get the much you can for government. That is more than enough. And once you've been able to plea bargain, let the country know that you have plea bargain, because that indictment stigma is there already. For you to plea bargain means that you are obviously admitting.
Yes.
You are admitting. So the man goes away with that tar or stigma. That is more than enough. So you don't need to go all the hog, knowing fully well that you don't have enough witnesses. And if you go all the hog, you cannot establish proof beyond reasonable doubt. So we need to exercise a lot of discretion in this matter, knowing fully well that one day people will ask the question, you have prosecuted X number of cases. How much does it cost us? At this point in time, where we are talking about recession, if we stop some prosecution, do you know how much will still be kept in the coffers? How much are the lawyers paid, amongst others? These are things that we are taking away from the public treasury. So,
Professor Azinge, is there a nexus between media trial, which Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali has talked about earlier, and the wider implication of stigmatizing a plea bargain accused?
Well, when you have plea bargain, you have a better platform to stand on. But when you are media trying, it means that maybe ultimately the person may escape, because you may still not have enough evidence to establish proof beyond reasonable doubt. Then you have made a mistake. But when the person gets to a point where he or she accepts to plea bargain, then it means that at least to an extent there is an admission to an extent. And you get the money from the person may not be sentenced to imprisonment or any other thing, but you get the process of the crime amongst other things, and then the person will walk free. But the public ought to know that XYZ possibly play bargain, and if there are some other corollaries or collateral damages, if you have done this, it means that you may not be fit and proper person to hold public office for another 10 years, you may not contest election, you may not do this. Obviously, that stigma is there, and that lives with you and lives with your generation, as the case may be.
Thank you very much, Professor Azinge. But then I'd like to get the views of Yusuf Ali SAN. This has the issue of plea bargain at one time I knew was a very controversial issue here in Nigeria. And even in these times, you know, that this administration is fighting corruption, some people have also come out to say that this could be the way out. A soft landing, a plea bargain could actually be the way out. Instead of going all the way to the courts and, you know, delay tactics, at the end of the day, we don't get anything out.
Thank you very much. The position espoused by Professor Zinge had always been my position. The only caveat before the ACJ, Administration of Criminal Justice law was made, was that there should be rules to guide it. In all advanced criminal justice system, there is opportunity for plea bargaining. And like he has rightly said, you don't ask for your pound of flesh at every time, because an eye for an eye will leave the whole world blind. You know, now somebody had taken 5 million naira and he said, look, gentlemen, yes, it's true I took this money, okay, but I spent 500,000 out of it. Okay, the state can say, look, okay, return 4.2 million. Keep 200,000 for your legal something, and then what is important, and I've said this even at the beginning, you see, because it looks simple. Some people may think it's too simplistic, but in truth, what is the objective, especially for those who are taking money from public till? What should be the objective of the state? Is to recoup the money. If the man goes to jail for the next 150 years, and the money is kept somewhere out of the reach of the government, it's a loss to all of us. So we should take, I agree with Azinge, seriously. Look, let's do much of plea bargaining even now in this recession, and with the stupendous mouth keeping a gap for volume of money we are hearing. So instead of running around, and let me tell you, and I said this before too, those who take so much will also have capacity to grandstand. Yes. Legally, socially, politically. So if that is the case, it's better sit them down. We have traced so much to you. Let's plea bargain. What are you going to give back? Like, well, we take X back. Of course, you can't leave the man pauperized. And like Professor Zinge rightly said, yes, because you see, we must be realistic. Even in the US, nobody does that in the US. If you have taken 200 million in the US, they don't say you return the whole of the money. It's never done that way. Otherwise, people will not cooperate. They won't cooperate. And these are people who have ability, individually and as a group, to stall the whole process. Yeah. So for me, when he has returned the money, it doesn't mean he won't be convicted. That's the thing about plea bargain. When you plea bargain, it means you will be given a lighter sentence rather than what you will have taken before. So instead of going for 15 years, you may go for 2 months. For me, it's not the number of months or years that is important. It's the fact of conviction. And like I rightly said, but if you are convicted for an offense that is related with fraud, you suffer constitutional disability for public office. So for me, it is very essential that we must get it right. Plea bargain is not a bad thing. It's the way we practice it. As long as it's transparent, as long as there are rules that will guide it, as long as people will know that X, Y person has done this, and importantly, we should also be able to to know what happens to all the monies that are recovered as a result of plea bargain. Because you see, we don't want to use, you are chasing somebody for corruption and then the money also ends up in some people's purses. So these are very, very important things. So we must know at every point what are taking place and who has bargained for something. And I agree with Professor Zinge as well. In this country, nobody knows the cause of any prosecution. I can say this without any fear of contradiction. Nobody ever taking the time taken. You see, the judges, when they sit, the public is paying for that. the people from the ministry who are prosecuting, they take vehicle to the court. There should be cost for that. So when we aggregate all this, why chase a man? Why prosecute a man who has stolen 5 million naira when it will take 20 million? And when we can tell him to return 4.5 million out of the money and then he goes.
Well, but let us senior advocate, some commentators will argue that you need to spend 20 million to convict a man who has stolen 5 million to serve as a deterrence to potentially, criminally minded persons, so that it doesn't then become the norm that somebody else will pick 10 million instead of spend 30 million and so on and so forth. But your views are noted, and we'll come back to the other guests in the course of this conversation, just to indicate that we have reactions already coming in from our viewers who have taken advantage of the Twitter handle. You can see it on the screen there at NTAGMA. We'll take those tweets right now. One is from Tom. It says, Nigerians should love, this is persuasive, it says, Nigerians should love the Lord our God with all their might. If we do this, I see no reason why corruption will not flee.
Sani Michael Imokoji says, in an ideal situation, judiciary is supposed to be at the front burner in the fight against corruption, but the reverse is the case in our system. Our judiciary has subverted justice over the years, and nothing has changed in this current dispensation.
Kiari Michelle tweets, corruption is a way of life for most Nigerians. Nobody respects the law or the judiciary.
And Augustine Edu Ekpo says, courts in Nigeria is a reflection of what is going on in the country. Corruption is the order of the day in all the spheres of our society. Only in Nigeria that the principle of hierarchy of courts are not strictly adhered to. Cases do not move from a lower to a higher court.
Well, that's a question with that second leg of his contribution. I'm sure the experts will put in their views if we pose the question to them. Chibuzo Jonathan tweets, until we start to obey court orders, corruption won't stop. When the court rules that we should release or hold a person, let it be.
And Jetra says, the challenge is discharged to legitimate judgments of the courts, and some lawyers colluding to subvert judgments. That is corruption.
And Papi Big One tweets, say, we the citizens are also to blame. We put all our blame on the wrong persons.
And in every system, this one is from Abdul Karim Duro, he says, there's preference for public good. We all know many Nigerians who cannot account for their wealth, yet they claim it is their wealth. We must tell people to prove what they did not steal, rather than saying government must prove that they stole.
And Ibn Bature tweets, we say no to corruption. Now, someone will steal chicken and will be sentenced to 6 months, and politicians steal billions of naira and go for 100 million naira bail.
Oscar Kelechi says our lawyers are more corrupt than the police. Money rules, not the law anymore. They want to be as rich as our politicians. No justice.
All right, and then we have this from Dominic Oga. It says, anti-graft agencies most times create criminals by their disposition to complaints from citizens against corruption. EFCC should sit up.
And Aminu Uba Al-Hassan says, justice system that grants bail to someone who embezzled funds meant to secure citizens is not only wrong, but malign. Lives were lost.
And Tinubu Ayodeji tweets, lawyers can combat corruption by ensuring compliance with existing legal and other anti-corruption instruments.
Donatus Abo says the law should be promulgated to enable forfeiture of assets in the suspect of no proof of law funding for public office holders.
And we have this from Idris Karim. It says the Inspector General of Police is supposed to be with you people. I would like him to say something about corruption.
And Jacob Tunde says to fight corruption, Nuhu Ribadu, lawyers and police should be brought back to head the EFCC. All his successors failed to follow his steps.
All right, this is from Engineer Kanu Emeka. It says, my philosophical view of this whole issue is, quote, until I made up my mind to be good and eschew corruption, unquote. This is because it's all about individual commitment. Otherwise, we are still playing. Now, those are the tweets that we are taking in the meantime. We'll come back to your tweets in the course of this conversation, just to return to the other two guests. Now, in citing examples to illustrate the various positions that you gentlemen have made, particularly Leonard Senior Advocate, you find in the account of an individual 5 billion naira. The account, if you say an account is held in a bank, for instance, And from some of the cases that we have also seen, some properties have either been confiscated or otherwise attached. There are property transactions. There are estate agents who were involved, and also some people say lawyers who assisted in drafting the papers for the transfer of interest. So, question first goes to Professor Azinge. What should be the role of professionals in apprehending what may, on the face of it, be suspicious transactions?
Well, every lawyer is guided by the rules of professional conduct or ethics, as the case may be. And it is not for a lawyer prima facie to determine the source of income or the source of wealth, as the case may be, unless that is manifestly clear that this is stolen money. And for us to think otherwise is to obviously adopt the same issue that we are trying to guard against, and that is media trial and what have you. It is not for us to independently try would-be clients before we can take them on board, as the case may be. Well, ours is to make sure that we represent the clients to the best of our ability professionally, as the case may be, and not for us to become judgmental, as the case may be, on the face of it. To that extent, one, we must try as much as possible to be circumspect in determining who to represent and who not to represent, depending on the facts available to us. And I know that there are so many lawyers, senior, junior, who obviously have, for one reason or the other, refused to handle a lot of cases. I don't need to mention names, but a lot have done that, which means that people are still morally upright to the extent that I don't want to get involved with this. No matter how much is at stake, I don't want to be part of this. We must encourage the young ones and even the senior ones, as the case may be, to toe that line of honor and integrity more often than not. I believe that is the point that the EFCC seem to be making, that many people should toe that line. Try and reject cases when you are not too sure. But when you are sure that obviously there is a case to defend, I don't think that there is anything wrong in a lawyer taking up that case and obviously pursuing it to a logical conclusion. For me, that should be the part of honor, as the case may be.
Well, from some of our tweets now, it's kind of clear that the public, and I say the public, and also not too long ago, we had the EFCC saying that lawyers are not also helping, them. Is it an issue of the fact that, the public and, of course, agencies that fight corruption do not understand clearly what the lawyers are supposed to be doing? Are you misunderstood?
No, precisely. We are highly misunderstood. Because the law is clear. It's just like people saying that lawyers are liars. That may not necessarily be so. Again, it's born out of misconception and misunderstanding. With the greatest respect, I believe that is also the challenge other people are facing in this situation, because lawyers are trained to do certain things and they are trained to observe technicalities and so on and so forth. So it is wrong for anybody to think that because lawyers are doing their work professionally and in accordance to the rules of conduct and, of course, the rules of the court and, of course, their own oath as lawyers, that they are doing something untoward. I think that is a way of misunderstanding lawyers and what they stand for, and more often than not, what they are trained to do. And that's why when they say that lawyers are learned, people obviously take that for granted. Because there are certain things a lawyer is trained to do that the uninitiated certainly will never understand. And for us, it is not a matter of worry. It is a matter of sympathy that obviously people don't understand where you are coming from and what you expected to do.
All right, let's get the views of Justice Tumaka on this. Any need for professional circumspection when faced with a somewhat suspicious transaction, whether in terms of representation or solicitor's job?
Like the Prof has said, I think it will be even counter to the ethics of the legal profession for you to say you want to do a pre-judgment of a matter before you take it up. it is your duty bound, even as a lawyer, from rules for you to take up matters as long as it is going to help in the temple of justice. I believe that we should not in any way increase the corruption that we're trying to guard against by further burdening lawyers to say that they have to, or they should be circumspect in the kind of personal integrity is there. If I feel that I do not want to associate with a particular matter and I don't want to handle any this matter, I stay away. But even that has, as far as I am also concerned, even that has a defect, because if all lawyers say they are not going to handle certain matters, what happens?
That's therefore the risk to the right of representation.
That's what happens. There's a risk to right of representation.
All right, Justice Tumaka, thanks. Let's get the views of Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali. What's your take on it, especially measured against the background of the fiduciary principle? Would you like that to be lifted, even banker-customer relations, and then lawyer-client relations, or estate agent-client relations?
Confidentiality is at the root is at the root of most professions. If you're a medical doctor, for example, I'm sure you won't want to consult a medical doctor who will make your medical history public without your consent. That's confidentiality. It's the same thing with being lawyers. You see, I'm always surprised when people think they have the right to do their own duties and work, and that lawyers have no right to do theirs. There is division of labor in the way the society is structured. Now, and I'm also amazed when a lawyer, now lawyers who prosecute for the security agencies, they are the best lawyers. But those who defend those who have been prosecuted, they are villains. I mean, what kind of system is that? Who says that today if I defend an accused person, I can't prosecute for the state tomorrow? I've just said it, I prosecuted in the days of the faith banks. So there is nothing inherently, it's just because a misunderstanding, like a professor was saying, the SN rightly said, it's a real misunderstanding of our roles. And sometimes Nigerians, we suffer from social hysteria. Once an issue is on the front burner, everybody wants to be seen. As even those who make noise. You see, there are a lot of lawyers, both senior, junior, who are ruled by professional ethics and high morals, but they don't make a show of it. The fact that I didn't go out of my way to say, the particular correspondence agency, I'm available for you to come and consult me, does not make me a bad lawyer or a worse lawyer than somebody who believes that that's the best way to go. You see, and like Professor I think rightly said too, even in my own short career as a lawyer, years ago, when I wasn't, even more than 10 years ago, I've had occasions to reject what by the standard of that time was a lot of money, 250 million naira, to represent some people. And I said, no, I can't, it didn't work with my system. So, but that is not to say that I do not reserve the right, as prescribed by the laws of our country, to represent any. In fact, it is commonly said, and we are all told in the law school, that even the greatest felon is entitled to be defended before the courts. So for me, the issue is people must really understand what lawyers do. The fact that I represent an interest does not make me part of that interest. It's just like journalists. The fact that journalists write about criminals does not make them criminals. So when we defend people, it doesn't mean essentially that, we are also the same thing with them. It's just a matter of professional duty to ensure. But I agree with you, there must be circumspection. We must be careful. We must not be seen to promote the negative things in our society as professionals. That's very important.
Senior Advocate Yusuf Ali, thank you very much. The example you just gave now is apt. Rhoda, He says the fact that journalists or reporters cover crime doesn't make them criminals, but it also depends on how the title of the reporter is couched. Yes, if you say crime reporter, it's different from being a criminal reporter.
All right, gentlemen, let's take some of our tweets very quickly, and very, very briefly, we'll get your final thoughts. This very first one is from Oladimeji Olani. Why will a man who steals a goat be given 2-year jail term while a treasury looter is given a fine to be paid? I think the issue of immunity clause must be removed from political office holders for justice to be fair in the country. And
Stanley James tweets, to fight corruption, we need a data bank. We should make a law to mandate every citizen of Nigeria to keep financial records. And Jacobs Fergus says the judiciary is the hope of the common man. When this system is compromised or corrupt, then our precious democracy would be gone. Diego Obina tweets, everybody must be involved. This corruption must be defeated. Change begins with the public officers first. And Jacob Ojo says, had the judiciary never budgeted for computers, or the money for computers had never been given, has it never been given to them? And then Nathaniel Shock says the activities of, according to him, some of these smart lawyers impede the fight against corruption. They manipulate the criminal justice system. I think this whole thing boils down to our value system. If you look carefully, you will believe that our society encourages corruption. Well, I guess that's the much tweets we can take now. And gentlemen, I wish we could get your final thoughts, but actually we're out of time. I want to say a very big thank you for joining us on this discussion this morning. First of all, I'd like to say a very big thank you to Yusuf Ali, a senior advocate of Nigeria, a legal practitioner and pioneer chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association, NBA Anti-Corruption Committee. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thanks. And
also a very big thank you to former Director General of the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, Professor Epiphany Azinge-San. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. Also, my Lord, a former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Niger State, a former Deputy Chief Justice of Zanzibar, Justice Garba Tumaka. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
All right, very quickly, let's bring you up to date on sports. As Nigerian Football Federation has also